lately. It would not be the first time they travelled in treacherous weather, and at least this time they were not dodging the king's henchmen. They rode for perhaps another mile before Alex's ears pricked at a faint sound. He hadn't kept the Reaper at bay the past 3 years only by his skill with a claymore. He'd learned to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts flared. Reining in his mount, he raised his fist in a silent command for his men to follow suit. The band of warriors immediately ground to a halt behind him. A soft breeze pushed the stray leaves scattered across the forest floor in a gentle rustle, and with it carried the almost imperceptible sounds of a cry. Alex met the hard stare of his chief guardsman. "An animal?" Patrick asked. Alex shook his head. "I don't think so." He held perfectly still, listening again. He knew he should just move on. He had a job to do. But before he could order his men on their way, he heard another cry. This one more distinct. More distinctly feminine. Damn, he couldn't ignore it now. His brother's words flashed in his head. "Keep your identity hidden." Alex shook off the reminder. Not many would recognize him after so many years. He'd changed. War had hardened him. And not just in spirit. Do not delay. There would be no delay. This wouldn't take long. Feeling the familiar surge of blood rush through his veins, as his body anticipated the coming battle, he swung his destrier around to the south and plunged into the trees, leading his men in the direction of the screams. Right before the sky broke open, unleashing its torrential fury. It was going to rain. Perfect. Meg Mackinnon pulled the wool arrowsade, the full-length plaid she'd wrapped around her for protection from the elements, more firmly around her head, and once again cursed the necessity for this journey. They'd only just begun, and already she was dreading long days on horseback, navigating the treacherous tracks of the drovers. Even had her father been able to arrange one, a carriage would have been useless along these paths. The road from the Isle of Skye to Edinburgh was barely wide enough to ride 2 abreast. The cart that carried their belongings had proved to be enough of a burden on this rugged terrain. Meg had at least a week of discomfort left before her. It would take them that long to reach Edinburgh, where she must begin in earnest her search for a husband. She felt the familiar flutter of anxiety when she thought of all that was ahead of her. Her father had entrusted her to find the right man for her clan. She would not let him down. But the responsibility inherent in her decision weighed heavily on her. The pressures at times could be stifling. A wry smile touched the edges of her mouth. Perhaps a week of travel wasn't long enough. Yet part of her couldn't wait until it was all over. It would be a relief to have the decision made and behind her. Of course, then she would be married. And that brought a whole new bundle of anxieties. Meg sighed deeply, knowing she couldn't have put off the trip to court any longer. Her father's recent illness had made that very clear. Without her help, her brother's place as chief would be challenged. The Corbys had begun to circle the minute her father had taken to bed with a mysterious wasting ailment. Her once hale and hearty father, the powerful chief of Mackinnon, had lost nearly 2 stone and was still too weak to travel. Meg glanced over at her mother riding beside her and felt a pang of guilt for dragging her so far from home. It was difficult enough for Meg to leave her father and brother. She couldn't imagine how her mother must feel. "I'm sorry, Mother." Rosalind Mackinnon met her daughter's gaze with puzzlement. "Whatever for, child? For taking you away from father at a time like this?" Meg bit her lip, feeling the need to explain. "I just couldn't bring myself to accept." "Nonsense!" Her mother cut her off, a rare frown marring her beautiful face. "Your father is much better. A trip to court is exactly what I need. You know how I love all the latest fashions, the latest hairstyles." She smiled, conspiratorially. "And all the latest gossip." Meg returned the smile. She knew her mother was only trying to make her feel better, though she did love going to